I'm Nora Duncan, State Director for AARP Connecticut. Welcome to another episode of Coffee and Tea with AARP CT, an interview series on the issues important to people 50 plus in Connecticut and their families. Today we are going to preview the 2026 legislative session in Connecticut with John Erlingheuser and Natalie Shurtleff. They lead our advocacy efforts in the state, and with the help of our amazing volunteers, they get things done at the state legislature. So the legislative session starts in 2026 on February 4th. We have a lot planned. I have observed in the last year or two and more, but really in the last year or two, that a lot of what we do boils down to pocketbook issues on our key social mission areas. And so I think that's going to continue into 2026. So I'm going to bring John and Natalie on to tell us about what they have planned. And I'm just going to toggle back and forth between the two of them with some questions to get us started. So John, let's go with you first. You are continuously working on the hot topic of electric rates. You did a lot of negotiating and activating of AARP members on this in 2025 and, over the last decades. Where do you see us heading in 2026?
Oh, good morning, Nora, and good morning to everybody watching us today. It's a really good question. 2025 was a kind of a mixed bag. We had some success at the legislature, getting some good legislation passed and some bad things stopped. But we're at a crossroads in Connecticut in terms of regulating of the utilities, in particular electricity. There are new commissioners at the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority. Utilities have taken a lot of legal actions the challenge decisions of the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority. And I anticipate that they're going to do the same thing when it comes to the legislature and trying to get changes made to ease the regulatory burden that they currently have. So I fully anticipate they're going to put a full court push to try to weaken the things that AARP has fought so hard for over the years to ensure that impact on ratepayers is a primary or at least a top tier concern when determining what rate of return utilities get when they go in for a rate case. So the legislative work, the regulatory work, they're tied in together. So we're going to have to make sure that we don't weaken any of the protections that currently exist, and that, if anything, we work to ensure that they're strengthened now that we have a new commission of utility regulators over at the Pura. So, I'm cautiously optimistic that we can get some good things done. A lot of powerful interests on the other side and a lot of money, but we have, nearly 600,000 members in Connecticut and several hundred activists who come up to the Capitol to help us. And I think we can fight back and ensure that ratepayers are out in front.
Awesome. Yeah, it'll be another interesting year. So, John, just continuing on affordability, we made some progress on high-speed internet affordability in 2025. Can you tell us about that and the priority for 2026?
Yeah, so, that's another great question. I mean, some people remember during the heights of the pandemic, federal government had a program called the Affordable Connectivity Program. And prior to that, there was the Emergency Broadband Benefit, and both of those were brought forward to try to ensure that people had access to affordable internet. Connecticut, a very wired state. We have high-speed internet throughout most of Connecticut, not everywhere, but just about everywhere. But the issue really in Connecticut is affordability and the lack of people who are on lower and moderate incomes to be able to connect to that high-speed internet. And what happened is the Congress over the last couple of years failed to fund the Affordable Connectivity Program, where there were thousands of people in the state of Connecticut alone that were taking advantage of that program to help them pay for high-speed internet, which we all know, and I'm sure my colleague Natalie can attest to the fact that it's important for things like breaking down social isolation of older people who can't get out, can't see their loved ones, people who need to make telehealth visits, who can't get to the doctors regularly, but at least will get some access to healthcare through telemedicine. And frankly, for those that are in nursing homes who we fought to get provisions in legislation to ensure that there's some monitoring of what's going on in patients' rooms with access to high-speed internet. So because that money went away, we had to do something in the state of Connecticut, and we were lucky Senator Bob Duff passed the Affordable Connectivity Program here in Connecticut to ensure that people, particularly those that are on programs like Medicaid or SNAP, will have access starting September 1st to high-speed internet, paying no more than $40 a month for that high-speed internet. And 2026 is going to bring our efforts to try to defend the fact that that program needs to exist. Again, the internet providers will always say, we have high-speed internet, but we'll fight back and say we don't have affordable high-speed internet, and we have fully anticipate that they're going to use the time that we're working to get that program set up, which begins on September 1st, to try to unravel it. There's every indication that they're going to try that, but we're going to work with Senator Duff and others in the legislature to try to prevent that, and I'm quite confident we should succeed.
Little bit of defense there for you. Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, Natalie, we'll switch over to you. And so support for family caregivers has been a huge priority for AARP for years. What can we expect in the 2026 session?
Good morning, everyone. We've been working to support family caregivers for many years now, and our regular viewers may remember that last year we worked on some legislation to support a caregiver tax credit. And as is typical with these things, it takes many years for us to pass this sort of legislation. So we made some progress last year, but we're coming back year two to continue working on that effort. We know that family caregivers in Connecticut, these are unpaid loved ones that are taking care of their parents or their spouse or maybe a sibling as they get older and need support. And these people are doing it as a labor of love, and it's unpaid, often unthanked work. And it also can be extremely expensive. And the little things just add up when folks are paying out of pocket to support caregiving for their loved one. So we're looking for a caregiver tax credit to offset those costs and give people a little bit of financial support to help offset the many costs of family caregiving. One thing that I'm really excited about this year that's going to help us move this legislation forward is we have a bipartisan group of legislators behind the issue. We know that family caregivers are across the aisle. And so this is somewhere where we can work with all legislators on both sides of the aisle to support this issue and move it forward. So excited to hopefully get some more momentum on it this year. It still may not pass this year, but we're going to keep pushing forward and keep highlighting the stories of family caregivers.
Well, with nearly 750,000 family caregivers in Connecticut, I think it's definitely a bipartisan issue.
Yep.
So, Natalie, continuing with the bipartisan, you did tremendous work with the bipartisan committee on prescription drug affordability in Connecticut in 2025. We really saw some great successes. A lot of industries against the the bill and a lot of different aspects of the bill that passed. So that came through. Thumbs up for advocates and for consumers across the board. So tell us what's on deck for healthcare and long-term services and supports in 2026.
Yeah, I mean, that bill was a big win. Again, something that took many years to get passed. So this year we're, looking to continue that work. There may be some defending of that effort, similar to some of what John talked about earlier. Sometimes when we pass good policy, we have to make sure that it gets implemented well and defend against industry that may be looking to roll it back. One of the other things that we'll be working on this year is implementing some requirements that came from a bill passed in the federal government over the summer. So the federal government says is that Connecticut has to make some changes to our Medicaid program and our SNAP program. That's the food benefits for low income people, including older adults in Connecticut, and healthcare for them. And so the federal government says that we have to make some changes to the program, and we want to make sure that when we do that in Connecticut, that we do it in a way that doesn't harm people, to make sure that people don't lose their coverage because of bureaucratic changes. We want to make sure that everyone that is eligible for these programs continues to have access and doesn't lose their health benefits or their SNAP benefits because they filled out a form wrong or couldn't get through on the phone to talk to someone. So we want to make sure that these new requirements are as seamless and as user-friendly as possible.
Got it. Yeah. And I'm thinking about all those family caregivers who might be in need of those benefits and, what happens if they're not able to work. So work to do there across the board, across the US as well. All right, John, back to you. Anybody who's watched this ever knows AARP is very active in fraud prevention and ensuring consumer protections. Our volunteers in Connecticut and across the country do more presentations in community about fraud prevention than probably just about anything. But, we have more to do here. Crypto and gift card scams have been a topic of conversation in our office. You know what? I have a feeling there's always going to be work to do in fraud protection and consumer protection. So tell us what's on deck for this coming year.
Great question, Nora. I mean, and as you said, our volunteers are so in tune with this in terms of changing the law and in terms of preventing fraud from taking place in the first place and educating the public. So, there are two big areas we hope to address, and that's the areas around gift card fraud and areas around crypto fraud, but particularly around crypto ATMs and abuses that happen in that area. So when you talk about cryptocurrency fraud, according to the FBI, just in 2024 alone, $247 million in crypto ATM losses occurred. And then just the first half of this year through July, $240 million. So this is an issue that's growing and growing exponentially. We have to work on this more and more. We passed some good legislation, but the problem is it effective? And are people actually following the laws that we already passed to prevent crypto fraud? We work with law enforcement. We work with the consumer organizations. But we have to make sure that people aren't falling through the gaps. Just to give you an example, there was a woman on a national call that I participated in where she was being defrauded of cryptocurrency by being told to go and withdraw cryptocurrency. And she was doing it so long and so often because you're limited in terms of the amount of crypto you can take out of the machine at one time, that the clerk at the store actually went over and gave this elderly woman a chair to sit down as she was continuing to drain her life savings away in cryptocurrency. And unlike other types of payments, with credit cards or debit cards, that money is gone. It's into the ether because there aren't the same rules of engagement that there are when it comes to paying with something by a credit card or by a debit card. So we have to work to tighten that up. Our volunteers and fraud are going to be on top of it, ensuring that the laws that are currently passed are being enforced, but also making sure we fill in the gaps. And we have some great stories and some great volunteers and some great advocates on this issue who we work very closely with. Along with crypto fraud and these crypto ATMs, which, by the way, are everywhere. People might not realize it, but if they just go into their search browser and Google and type crypto ATMs near me, I guarantee you within a mile or two of them, there are multiples of them. And so, it's just the newest venue that is the fraudsters are out there taking advantage of. And it's really costing people an awful lot. And older folks are particularly more vulnerable to this type of fraud. And then in gift cards, it's a whole nother world, right? I mean, there are two areas that we look at when it comes to gift card fraud. There are those that call up and they say, your grandson is in jail, your granddaughter's in jail, go down to the CVS or go down to the Walmart and get a gift card, send me the information, and that'll be used to get your loved one out of jail. That happens, and we're going to continue to fight on that. But then one of the new worlds that's taking place is that people are actually, skimming the security codes and numbers off gift cards that are in stores, so that when you go and actually buy a gift card and take it home and or try to use it or give it to somebody as a gift, it's already been drained of the money that you put on it because somebody else has the activation information and they've already drained the money and spent it. And retailers are concerned about that because frankly it's a black eye to them, even though they're not the ones defrauding the public. We're concerned about it because again, it's people's hard-earned money that they're trying to use for all kinds of important things. And yet it's being taken from them. So, two big areas that we're going to continue to work on, in our fraud prevention and consumer protection kind of world. And we're hopeful that we can take and build on the things that we've already done to help people in those areas.
There's a scam, a criminal is looking for it. There's that to be said. Okay,
Yep.
we will. I think this is going to be a bipartisan issue as well. So let's hope we can get some good stuff
Absolutely.
done. Working with, industry and advocacy organizations and law enforcement. Seems like we should be able to get something done. Okay, Natalie, totally shifting gears again. You worked on transit-oriented development in 2025. It was part of a larger package. It passed, then it was vetoed, and then a new version passed in special session in fall of 2025. So, is there work left to do on livable communities? What do you see see this looking like in 2026?
The bill that ended up passing is a great incremental step forward. So, a lot of progress, but it's not the end all be all. So, we're going to continue working on this issue and continue working to make communities livable for people of all ages. So, the bill that passed last year is working to make sure that people have the ability to live in communities that have the things that they need. We often hear from folks that are getting older, they maybe want to downsize their house, but they don't want to move out of the community that they've lived in their entire lives. And they want to stay close to the networks that they have developed, the people they know that they can rely on when they need support. And so the legislation that we passed will help ensure that there are lots of housing options available in all communities, including what are called transit-oriented developments. So developments around public transportation, walkable communities where folks can live somewhere where they can walk to the local coffee shop or cafe to get lunch or a coffee with their friends, walk to other locations that they need to in their daily lives, which is really great for folks as they get older and maybe don't want to or aren't able to drive everywhere. So we'll be continuing to work to expand our livability work and make sure that people have access to safe, reliable, affordable public transportation, that streets are safe for people of all, for all users, whether you're driving or walking or taking a bike. We got a lot of work to do to make our communities more livable, but we'll be continuing to work on it.
Great. And I would encourage folks to check out the 2025 10th anniversary edition of the AARP Livability Index. Check out your town, see how livable it is based on a plethora of data points, and you can even narrow it down to your specific neighborhood. So check that out, and then you'll see what kind of work Natalie's talking about. And for our final question, John, voter education, big part of our mission as an organization. Voters in 2024 said that they did not want to have an excuse to vote absentee anymore. Too complicated. And the legislature now needs to take action in advance of the 2026 elections. So could you fill us in on what you anticipate is going to happen?
It's going to be a big issue. Legislature has to act, as you said. The voters overwhelmingly removed the prohibition in the Connecticut Constitution that prevented people from being able to vote absentee ballot universally or with no excuse. So now, as you pointed out, our state statutes have to get up to par with what the will of the voters were. And that includes both removing the prohibition of the excuses that are in state statute that were also in the Constitution. But it also means kind of streamlining and making the process of voting universally by absentee ballot more user friendly. We have this cumbersome two-step process where you have to get an application, you have to mail it in, you have to or deliver it in person or put it in a drop box at your town hall, and then you got to get a ballot sent to you, and then you have to fill that out, and it's just so cumbersome. And then so much of the fraud that people hear about really revolves not around the actual people voting multiple times or people fraudulently voting in somebody else's name. It's really around the handling of applications and things like that. And so we want to make sure that the whole process is more safe and secure, streamlined, accessible, and user friendly. And AARP is going to do all we can to make sure the legislature passes some good legislation in 2025. It seems like it's a priority for the appropriate committees in the legislature. I think there is bipartisan support for changing the law. There are probably going to be some disagreements about what that actually means, and we'll work through that. We have good relations on both sides when it comes to these issues. And then AARP members themselves are going to make it a point of working to ensure for the rest of the year that people actually know what their voting options are, because we've done a lot of work to ensure that people can have in-person early voting, no excuse absentee balloting, voting same day on election, election day, voter registration, all things that AARP has worked and supported over the years in Connecticut. And we've gone from one of the most restrictive states, and I think by the end of 2026, we're going to probably be one of the most expansive states, or at least right up there with the rest of the country, and having good options for people to vote. So I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully we'll have a great year.
Yeah, and hopefully when it comes time, we roll into November, things are a lot less complicated. We'll
I hope
see.
so.
All right, that's about all the time we have. Thanks so much to John and Natalie and all of the AARP Connecticut staff, our e-advocates who take the time to email their elected officials on important issues, and especially to our army of red shirt volunteers for all they did to make 2025 a success, and that I know they will continue to do throughout 2026 to make that another successful year at the state capitol with voter education and beyond. So remember, you can join us as an e-advocate, the easiest way to take action on issues important to age 50 plus and their families, to help us advance policies in Connecticut and federally. Just go ahead and scan that QR code. And we'll be back for the legislative session talking about all these issues with elected officials, our volunteers, commissioners, and more. So thank you very much, and take care.